Hi everyone, my name is Vikas Kumar. Welcome back. On 7th of October 2023, Hamas launched at least 5,000 rockets from the Gaza directed against Israel. This killed around 1,400 Israelis, with many Israeli soldiers and civilians, including women, children, being taken hostage to the Gaza Strip. Israel launched the retaliatory strike and declared the war on Hamas next day. Around 35,000 Palestinians have been killed so far, and about 1 million have been internally displaced. Israel cut off the food, water, electricity, and fuel supply to the Gaza, sparking of a severe humanitarian crisis in the region. The Israel-Palestine conflict is one of the oldest and persisting conflict in the world. How the Israel and Palestine conflict started, what is the history of the Palestine and Israel, we would know everything about this conflict in this video. To understand the present day ongoing bloody conflict between Israel and Palestine, it is necessary to understand the background of both the countries and people associated with it. Although the present conflict has its root in 20th century, a brief background of the region with a respect to the ancient history will help us to understand the religious and historical significance of the region. Specifically, we need to understand the main stakeholders in this conflict. In this video, we will understand the history of the Israel and Palestine, birth of the Israel as a country, and why the Palestine and Israelis are fighting. What is the Hamas and importance of the holy city Jerusalem? Israel today is a very small country in the West Asia, about the size of one of the India's northeastern state, Meghalaya or Manipur. Israel has many sites of the religious significance to the Jews, Christians and Muslims, and has a complex history. Today the population of Israel is mostly Jews, though there are the minorities of the Christian and Muslim also. First of all, let's discuss about the history of the Jews in Palestine. Most of what is known about the ancient history of the Israel is sourced from the Hebrew Bible. The oldest script that mentioned the land of the Israel were not found in the region, but rather the empire that ruled the Middle East for the centuries. It was called Canaan. The Canaanites were not one nation but the different people who lived in the city and states and used to pay the taxes to the Egypt. Jews are said to be the descendant from the biblical figure Abraham, who lived more than 3,500 years ago. Abraham fled from Mesopotamia, now we call the country Iraq, to the Canaan, which includes the Jerusalem. There he established a new religion among the Hebrew-speaking people who lived in the region. Those people became the Israelis. Around 5 BC, this land became known as Palestine. The people who called it home were known as Palestinians. Because so many ancient cultural and religious groups claimed this region as their own, many people who have fought over the land for the thousands of the years. The Israelis took over the land of the Israel, conquering the Canaanites and fighting against the Philistines. King David made the Jerusalem his capital, and his son King Solomon built the first temple. Now it is known as Western Wall of the Temple Mount. After the death of Solomon, the kingdom split into the two regions, Israel, the 10 tribes, and the Judah around Jerusalem. In 732, the kingdom of Israel was conquered by the Assyrians and the Jews were expelled from Israel. Now let's discuss about Ottoman Empire from the 1517 to 1970. The Ottoman Empire, also known as the Turkish Empire, run from the today's Turkey, expanded very quickly and ruled for the next 300 years. Local rulers rose and fell, and the Ottoman Empire's central regimes were weak and corrupt. Napoleon's war campaign in the Middle East brought the land of Israel to the people's attention, and the European power took the interest in obtaining the foothold in this area. But it was not until the end of the World War I that the Ottoman Empire finally collapsed. Then the British came in 1917, and between 1920 and 1948, the United Kingdom controlled the Palestine, which then had the population that was mostly Arab people who used to speak Arabic. Many Jews who believed that this was their homeland moved to this region during this time only, but the Palestinians who believed that this was their homeland too. As more Jews came to the region, fighting between the two groups increased. During the time of the Hitler and Holocaust of the World War II in 1939 to 1945, when the Nazi soldiers murdered the 6 million Jews who could fled Europe, many went to living with other Jews in the British-controlled Palestine, where over 1 million Arabs were also living. Because so many Jews had been forced to leave the Europe due to war and Hitler, they believed that they needed their own country. In 1948, the British withdrew, and with the support of the United Nations, Jews living in the Palestine created the state of Israel. But the Palestinians believed that the region should be run by the Arab, and a year-long conflict erupted. Even though the Palestinians were backed by the armies from the Egypt, Jordan, Iraq and Syria, but the Israelis won the war with the help of the Britain and USA. In 1949, the territory was divided into the state of the Israel for the Jewish people and the West Bank, East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip for the Arabs. But dividing the region did not lead to the peace, and disputes over the land boundaries and shipping routes escalated. In 1967, after a war between the Israel and neighboring Arab countries that lasted just for the 6 days, Israel took control of the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and the East Jerusalem. Palestinians in the West Bank and the East Jerusalem remained the citizen of the Jordan until 1988, but the Jordan cut all the ties of these territories in 1988. Israelis and the Palestinians have been fighting over the areas ever since. Most of the Palestinians believe that they are mistreated by Israeli government, they are not protected by Israeli law, and many cannot freely move between the territories in Israel or from one Palestinian territory to other. Israel also allowed the Jew settlers to live in the West Bank, which led the Palestinians to feel like their land was being taken away from them. This led to the many armed conflicts between the Arabs and Jews. In 2005, the Israeli pulled army and settlers out of the Gaza Strip, where they had been for the 38 years in an attempt to bring the peace. But the Israel maintained the control over the movement of the people and goods through the Gaza's border, which angered the Palestinians. 2 years later, the political party Hamas, which is considered by the many countries as the terrorist group, won the elections, and they kicked out the more moderate group Fatah, which is also a political party from the Gaza. Hamas is the same group which attacked Israel on 7th of October 2023. Israel believes that Hamas is getting support from Iran, which we will discuss in the different video. Now let's discuss about importance of the holy city Jerusalem. The conversation about Jerusalem is inevitably a conversation about faith and specifically about control of some of the holiest sites to the Jews, Muslims and Christians. The geography of Jerusalem is complex. At the center of Jerusalem, there are 3 major holy sites. The Al-Aqsa Mosque, the 3rd holiest site in the world for Muslims. The Western Wall, part of the holiest site in the world for Jews. And the Church of Holy Sepulchre, which marks the place where the many Christians believe that Jesus was crucified, entombed and resurrected. To understand what is going on in Jerusalem right now, it is essential to understand why the city feels so crucial at this moment to the Muslim, Jews and many Christians. Let's discuss about how did all these holy sites end up in one place only. It depends on whom you ask. Jerusalem is the central to the geography of the events. Between 587 BC and AD 70, Jews built and then saw the destruction 2 temples in the Jerusalem that were the center of their religious and communal life. Nearly 2000 years later, Jerusalem and the temple remain the center to the traditional Jews thought and prayer. Around the world, Jews pray facing to the Jerusalem. Jews' rabbinical teaching hold that when the Messiah would come, the temple will be rebuilt. Today, one of the old retaining wall of the temple called the Western Wall is the principal worship site for the Jews. For Christians, Jerusalem is also the place where the Jesus Christ died and was resurrected. Many also believe that city as a central to the imminent second coming of Jesus. Jerusalem is now a major pilgrimage site for the Christian from around the world. For Muslims, Jerusalem is a site of the key events in the life of Paigambar Muhammad and other important figures. It is also the spot where, according to traditional interpretations of the Quran and other texts, the Prophet Muhammad ascended to the heaven. Muhammad was carried from Makkah to the Jerusalem and then from Jerusalem to the heaven, where he conversed with the prophets before returning to the earth. For more than 1300 years, there have been a Muslim shrine in the Jerusalem. Now we will discuss who actually controls the holy sites. It is complicated. Between 1948, when Israel became a state, and 1967, control of the Jerusalem was split, with Israel controlling West Jerusalem and the Jordan controlling the East Jerusalem. According to the old city major holy sites, in 1967, after the 6-day war with the Jordan, Egypt, Syria and other Arab states, Israel captured the eastern half of the Israel and annexed it, razing the buildings in front of the Western Wall and creating a plaza to accommodate the tourists and worshippers. The international community does not recognize Israel's jurisdiction over this territory, and much of the old city's population is Palestinians. The entire old city, including its Muslim holy sites, is now within the border area where the Israel exercises final control. However, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Dome of the Rock and the entire area Muslim call Haram al-Sharif, which is called as a Temple Mount by Jews, are administered by the Jerusalem Islamic Waqf Board, a Muslim religious organization overseen by Jordanian government that handles the security and exercises considerable authority over the area. Israeli attempts to exercise additional authority in the area are interpreted by many Muslims as a threat. For example, when the Israeli government tried to install metal detector at the entrance of the Haram al-Sharif, there were mass protests and the government eventually backed off. The Israeli government and a group of powerful Orthodox Jews who are themselves controversial within the Jews world exercise direct control over the Western Wall, which sits at the foot of the Temple Mount, and in the same way a complicated coalition of the Christian group exercise day-to-day authority over the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. There are a lot of things that need to be resolved by international community and UN. I believe you have understood one of the oldest conflict that is still going on. I know there is much more to cover about this conflict. You can ask the question in the comment box. Thank you for watching this video.